Welcome to the Love, Sex, and Leadership podcast, where you can discover simple tantric teachings to embody your true power, awaken your soul's wisdom, and live an inspired life as a natural, intuitive, and heart-centered leader. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love, Sex, and Leadership. I'm very excited to have a friend, Sigourney Belle, here with me today, coming in from just outside of Melbourne in Australia. I met Sigourney years ago when I was doing a lot more teaching in Australia before they decided to kick me out for several years.
That's right.
Yeah, very excited to bring her to the show. She's a amazing mystical woman, an author, teaches really some incredible body work. I haven't particularly taken it myself, but I've heard really great feedback from so many people that take it, kind of weaving together the mystical side with the grounded practical tools to make people more capable of really making profound change in people's energetic and physiological bodies. So there's so much more I can say, but welcome to the show, Sigourney. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And also a mama of was she 3 or 4? How old is your daughter?
She's going on for just about to hit her second Mars return and really going through that. 4-year-old daughter, Australia.
Amazing. As a soon-to-be father, I'm always very appreciative of people in our field that are not only making big impact, but also bringing life into the world. I think it takes a certain quality of a woman, of a parent, of a couple, whatever the dynamic is, to really be on purpose, but also to say, hey, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm someone bringing life into this world. Because I was just having a chat with a friend of mine here in Portugal about that. I can really tell the difference between the older people in our field of work who are parents and those who are not. There's a different quality of energy that's there. I'm wondering if you've noticed something similar.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I can speak from my own experience of, transitioning from maiden to mother and the profound impact that that's had on me. And, I've gone on to study matriarchal medicine, and actually, like, during that transition period, your whole nervous system changes, and it doesn't just change like temporarily, it actually changes for good, similar to the transition, during when we move from or into our crone era. Actually, our whole physiology changes. So it makes sense that also, like, our embodiment changes, and the way that we kind of show up also shifts. So yeah, for women, for example, like we basically have this process where all of these neurons and synapses are pruned, and the limbic system and all of the deeper kind of parts of our instinctual nervous system become hyper vigilant and wired more deeply. So we lose capacity to actually be more cognitive, and all of our instincts just come online in this way that's just this superpower. I remember once I was like sitting in this cafe in the UK, and my daughter at that point had just started to like move around more. And I just was talking to someone, and I just had this instinct to run to the road. And as I looked out the window, she was like nearly at the road, about to be hit by a car. And somehow or another, I was able to get there and stop her within like, split seconds. I feel like, yeah, it was just this lightning instinct. So everything just like really heightens, and, your emotional body, your instinctual body becomes, stronger, and all of these logical aspects of self kind of start to dissolve. They call it baby brain, but actually it's just this profound superpower that women have once they've been through motherhood. We think about, like, I feel like I was intuitive anyway before I fell pregnant, and then it's like on steroids. So yeah, it massively impacts you in so many ways.
Well, make sure all of the either mothers to be or mothers becoming, Natasha, please listen to that. Your intuition is celebrated, darling.
Yeah, and I mean the shadow aspect of that. Sorry, I've just taken over.
No, 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 no.
The
Go,
shadow
go.
is, when that more reptilian brain does come on, it comes with things like heightened fears and like the shadow period of pregnancy is so intense because every possible fear for a woman comes up, and it comes up through her like instinctual body. And so yeah, it's like your intuition and your instincts are dialed up, but so is every every feeling, yeah, every possible fear. Like those parts of the brain are really alive, so it can be really intense as well.
Hmm. And I'm curious for yourself, how has that impacted your work, your creativity, your writing, like your as a mother? I mean, what has birthed and created in the last 4 years with your daughter here compared to before?
Yeah, I mean, one is like you have less time. So you have to like on a practical level, like when you have a child, you have less time. So, I think before I fell pregnant, I've always been hyper creative anyway. Um, but yeah, I was birthing through new things consistently. And as soon as Cerulean came through, well, there was actually an interesting journey because I just sold Wild Grace, my previous business, which was training women in the field of sexuality and Tantra. And I sold the business to set myself up for having a few years of maternity leave. And I actually got hacked and I lost all of my funds in my third trimester of pregnancy right before I was about to give birth. And I went through a separation at the same time, so I wasn't receiving support. So I went into this space of like, holy shit, I've got to create something new that's going to support me during this period. Like, what am I going to do?
Hmm.
And I was sitting with Cerulean and just her being and just liaising with her and being like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And that's when the whole vision for Soma Mystica came through in my third trimester. And I birthed that. And actually, that has grown to be one of my most successful businesses. And I feel like she was the one that brought that body of work through actually to support myself and her. And um, yeah, as I feel like also because I've had less ability to create so much, I've had to be really strategic with what I've created and to create something that means I don't have to show up as much. Previously I was traveling the world consistently running trainings and, constantly showing up, and it's like, oh, I don't actually have capacity for that anymore. So I need to create something that's going to hold me. And so that's what this business has done. Um, yeah, so it's just a different form of creation. It's a lot slower. Um, I've had to create something that's given me a lot more space.
Mm, yeah, I love that. In bringing our new one in the world in September, in the last year and a half, I mean, we now have three properties, our place here in Portugal, and a part of it was, I think, my soul saying, okay, you've been traveling like this for 15 years plus, it's time to ground a bit more. So I'm excited to see what gets to come through in that way. Um,
Mm.
and you were mentioning there's a few books that you're bringing into the world. One around cultivating genius. I'd love to hear more about this. And really, when I hear that cultivating genius, the piece that comes up for me, and I'm curious, obviously, you're writing the book on it, but I feel like a lot of people in our world forget the fact of knowing their own inner genius, and they kind of are often projecting that onto organizations, politics, people, leaders, instead of actually owning it within themselves. So that's what I hear when I hear cultivating genius. But tell me a little bit more. What's coming through you with that?
Yeah, back to your last question. Before I had Cerulean, I wrote 4 books within the matter of like 2 years. And then she came along and it was like, no, I can't do any of this. But actually, I've just popped out the other side and I've just started co-parenting in the past 8 months, really, really well, actually. And so I have time to myself again. And in that period of time, 2 new books have come through. So one of them is called The Mother Wild Revolution. It's basically about my journey of becoming a mother, but it's backed by a lot of neuroscience.
Mm.
and the studies that I've kind of done in the field of neurology and interlinking that with the journey of matrescence or becoming a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of what I share in that book, and really a driver for what I'm sharing, is around this idea of cultivating genius, and particularly in your child,
Mm-hmm.
like how to, speaking from a mother's point of view, particularly, in pregnancy and those first formative years of birth, there's so much enmeshment with our child, and it's so easy to enmesh and forget that these beings actually, they're individuals and they have their own unique genius coming through them. And I think it's been one of my biggest wounds that I've had to kind of traverse in this lifetime, is actually overcoming my own enmeshment wounds with my mother to work out who I am as an individual, and actually what are my individual gifts. And to the point where I was, in school, I was consistently sent to a child psychologist, so something wrong with me because of my behaviors at school, and I was just totally rebellious. And, intelligent, like getting top grades, but totally rebellious. I remember in year 11, I cut off all of my pubic hair and placed it on top of all of the fans in the classroom. It was a hot day, and the teacher came and turned the fans on. Whenever I was constantly getting into trouble, and
That's great.
this is
I'm
the kind of
sure.
thing I'm doing consistently.
I'm sure that should
I wrote
inspire some youth to do the same.
sorry.
That's okay.
I created all of these incredible books, like these flip books about penises and vaginas, and that's just what I would do in school. And I'd get kind of shipped off to the child psychologist at lunch, and she'd sit there and try and figure out what was happening with me, and I'd just sit there and say, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Like, this institution is not designed for people like me. Like, I'm a creative, and I knew that from a very young age, and I feel very fortunate that I feel like I knew myself from a young age and was able to stand
Mm.
for that, because a lot of people just take on all of these, pathologizing labels. And so it's something that's at the core of me, is this real sensitivity around children, and making sure that children are nurtured into knowing themselves and their genius, and outside of this system that constantly tries to, push us into some kind of box and pathologize us and label us. And we're in this epidemic actually at the moment, around this, like, medical pathologization. And I think one of the the real answers to this is genius and cultivating genius. So
Mm.
that's what I've written about in the Mother Wild Revolution.
Mm. Mm. I love that.
It's very specific things like Steiner's, the different developmental ages of genius as well, and mapping these kinds of things, teaching about astrology and how you can, like, look at the blueprint of your child and come to understand them separate to yourself, and support them as an individual, because every
Mhm.
parenting journey is so it's totally individual.
So I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious with that, with your awareness of your impact in the school system and what you went through, and with your daughter now 4, and soon, may or may
Mm.
not be entering some type of either group oriented community system for education, or public system, like you might not know in this moment. But what avenue do you feel like you're going to support her in with education? Something more public or private, or Steiner, or where do you feel like you'll go with her?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one, because I've had to step out of my experience in with my childhood and going to school, and to be listening to who is this being, and what does she want, and like, the reality is she's very different to me. She's far more social. As a child, I was extremely sensitive and introverted, didn't like being around people. I would sit in the corner of the playground and watch children play and be like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, what are they doing?
What's going on?
I meditate. I was this tiny little child meditating in the playground. And Cerulia is not that. She's very social. You know, I take her out to a cafe, and sometimes I'm like, oh, like having a panic attack before I'm even getting to the cafe, because I know she's going to be at every person's table telling them about, you know, her life. And she's so social, and needs a lot of human contact. So yeah, as a part of her journey, she's actually in a Steiner kindergarten currently.
Mm-hmm.
And she loves it. And I don't know if she will end up going to Steiner school. She's very creative. She's definitely got like a gift in the field of artistry and storytelling. So something like Steiner or Waldorf kind of models would suit her.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know yet. I'm kind of taking it year by year at the moment. She's still she's 3 going on 4. So I've got, you know, a year and a bit to kind of tune into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have also looked at Green School in Bali. I don't know if you've seen Green
Yep,
School.
familiar with that. Yep.
It's all what I love about Green School. It's very like everything's very practical based. They're not just learning concepts, they're applying them there. So they're, you know, innovating and creating energy sustainable technology on site, and they're building bridges. And it's not just learning mathematics, but they learn mathematics in reference to like, how can I use this to calculate the measurements of this bridge and to create these infrastructures. So that's something I really like about that, is like the practical application of everything that they learn, and how it's very environmental based,
Mm-hmm.
which is a value of mine and her father's. So that's also something we're kind of considering.
Mm.
I personally don't have the patience to homeschool,
Mm.
if I'm to
Fair
be
enough.
very honest.
Fair enough.
Mostly because I am extremely creative, and I actually need time and yeah, that kind of avenue for myself. But we have also considered having a tutor with her, and traveling and giving her world experience in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a dance. Because I'm also in a co-parenting dynamic, there's a lot more complexity to making those decisions than
Mm-hmm.
well, I think I haven't had the experience of parenting it with a partner, and maybe it's not true. Maybe it's more complex with a partner. But yeah, I've got to consider. There's 3 of us that we've got to consider, so it's a dance.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of awareness and attunement and kind of the decision making, not on a kind of personality basis, but also listening to the essence of her soul and where that's kind of being guided. So I'm hearing in your decision making a lot of what you're actually sharing and supporting others with as well, which is beautiful. Yeah. And you know, you mentioned one of the other things on when I think when we first met, you were a bit more connected in some of the Dakini work, and you know, supporting people in this way. And certainly a child that's writing you know, penises and vaginas on lots of cards and stuff. There must be a, you know, some kind of connection to our, you know, kind of sacred sexual self, and being, you know, a field that I'm quite connected with, and often, you know, teaching and supporting people with.
Mm,
What's your, you know, take on that, especially, you know, on this topic of parenthood and bringing
yeah.
in a healthy dialogue and conversation for youth around sexuality? Like, where I'd love to hear some of Sigourney's wisdom on this one, because this is a very alive topic, I feel, with parents especially.
Yeah, it's as a child who was had a lot of sexual energy and creative energy, same energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that had to learn how to work with that. Didn't do that well in childhood. I'm just gonna say. I remember going to school and sitting there and you know, touching myself in class, and all the kids would look at me and be like, "What is she doing?" I'm like, what are you looking at me for? Like, I don't I don't
Oh,
understand.
this is weird. Why? This isn't weird. This is what we do. That we're supposed to. We have a relationship to our body. What's wrong with you?
um, Yeah, and I have, I'm born the day before Raven. She's
Mhm.
11/11. I'm 10/11. I've got a stellium in Scorpio, so I'm Sun conjunct Pluto, Lilith, Mars, Mercury. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of sexual energy there,
Mhm.
and it's been a big part of my path. And in the more recent years since becoming a mother, actually, and as I stepped onto the path of motherhood, I decided to take a break from my work in the field of sexuality, mostly because I felt to dedicate that energy to the creative force that was my daughter, and to kind
Mm.
of work it in a different way. And it does your relationship to sexuality changes during motherhood too. And I mean, your hormones massively change. Like, you're not bleeding, you're cultivating life inside of you. It's a very different experience. So I kind of stepped away from that field when I fell pregnant, and I'm actually only starting to step back into that field. I've started writing this book in India recently on my journey, where it's my memoir of my years working as a dakini in Melbourne. Um, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey with a child also that is similar to me in that respect and has started exploring those parts of herself already. I've already educated her on her anatomy. She already knows about her sexual anatomy. We've already taught her boundaries and consent, and about her private parts and all of these kinds of things. And I feel like actually the earlier, well, this is my perspective, and particularly in light of what's happening here in Australia, I don't know if you've seen, but there's been quite a few uh, child pedophilia cases within daycare centers, like prolific
Mhm.
cases where there's been thousands of children and potentially infected with STDs. Um, so
Mm.
it's a lot's emerging here around that. And my daughter never went to daycare, and I chose to never put her in care outside of um, we actually have my father, her father and myself have strict boundaries around, who she's allowed to be around. And we actually don't allow her to just be in male company. And, we've just kind of set up like ultra safety nets there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she's also got education around her anatomy and her sexuality from a very young age, because she's also showed interest in that. Found her in the shower with a toothbrush a number of times, exploring that. So I've just taken that as an opportunity to teach her about her sexuality, and teach her about boundaries
Mhm.
and consent. So yeah, I feel like it's important to teach them earlier on, and they actually she's been really receptive to that and has really taken it on in a really healthy way. And she's only 3. Um,
Mhm.
and I actually feel a sense of like, if anything was to happen now, she would come to me and she would share her experiences with me. I feel quite empowered around that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what I hear and what you're sharing is a strong sense of like taking responsibility as a mother in early education. And I have such a longing and a wish that that would happen. And that comes from you having, a lot of experience and maturity and understanding it, in these areas where I feel like so many parents, the moment, a child is touching their genitals, it's like, no, stop, that you can't do that. And then it just
Mm.
perpetuates the cycle. And then parents
Mm.
wonder why there's such levels of shame and uncomfortability around sexuality, and they don't I don't know if they realize it's a direct reflection of what's happening inside of them. So I really commend you. And yeah, I feel quite
Mm.
similar in my own journey stepping into fatherhood, to just allow the naturalness, not a forced education, but just in those
Yeah.
moments when it's there, to bring it in, and not a forced place. So yeah, hats off to you. That
Mm.
sounds like you're, and I'm sure the education will only continue as she gets older.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, like, obviously, you gave an example there, but what else would you say to, parents, whether they're, I know you work with a lot of clients and have people, I'm sure you come across situations who, are trying to have healthy conversations and support, whether it's with their 3-year-old or their 10-year-old or, 15-year-old. What are some of the things you might offer to support parents in this way to navigate these challenges a bit more?
I've actually seen that there's some. I haven't ordered them, but I was going to order them and take a look at them. But there's some good educational books out there that actually teach on like sexuality and boundaries and consent to like as young as toddlers.
Mm,
So watch this space, but I'm gonna actually order them and check them out and like have a look because there
mhm,
actually are resources out there as well.
mhm,
I think just reiterating what you've said as well is to not create, shame around that experience or their experience with their sexuality, because as we know, the more we create shame around something, the more we suppress something, the more they are actually going to, that's going to only amplify
mhm, mhm,
any kind of behaviors. Like it has the opposite effect to what we want it to often.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, just really approaching it with a sense of like not playfulness, but playful curiosity and um, yeah, unshaming dialogue, I guess.
mhm.
I can't really speak to how I'm going to approach it, you know, during those teenage years because I'm really not there yet, and I, yeah, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, for
um,
sure. And, it's kind of a little subject change, but also it's connected. In your work with Soma Mystica, and I'd love for you to just kind of give a general description of that work, and B, how that correlates to the trauma and often the unconscious patterns that people are holding in their body. I've been teaching in the field of this for a while and teaching practitioners and helping people rewire their nervous system and come into a healthy state of a lot of the deep traumas that they've gone through, and been in that for a while. And I have my own approaches and ways, and I'd love to hear, especially when it comes to some of this, like some of these child and these Australian daycare systems are going to later in life have some you know, trauma-based pieces around being touched inappropriately and some of the things that have happened there. So, and that mainly exists, it gets shut off, it gets put into a different part of the brain, and we're not able to actually access it, but it impacts our day-to-day decision making. I've just been listening to The Body Keeps the Score from which is a great book on this whole subject matter. But I'd love to hear, especially how Soma Mystica really helps bridge this gap between healing trauma, awakening into our somatic intelligence, and also connecting to the mystical realms of this work.
Yeah, beautiful. So Soma Mystica, yeah, was really birthed to bridge uh, two fields which I feel have not been bridged very well, and that is the field of medicine and um, you know these physiological teachings on the body, and the field of spirituality. I feel like often they're kept very separate. And my experience is, well, I worked in the hospital systems around Australia for 12 years. 12 years? Nearly 12 years. Um, and yeah, within the hospital systems, I was specialized in the field of neurology, which is a niche kind of field which basically looks at the nervous system and works with neurological disorders. So I kind of developed a level of expertise around that, and my role was really in diagnosing clients that had neurological disorders. So anything acute, like acute brain injuries, strokes, multiple sclerosis, Guillain-Barre, to anything more subacute, which are things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, conversion syndrome, and these more chronic disorders. And so interestingly, as a part of my journey in that field, around 6 years in, I started to notice that I had medical intuition, and I started seeing things in clients' bodies. I actually detected a tumor in a woman because I had a vision of a lump in one of her breasts, and I ended up saving her life because I just told her, I think you need to go and get this tested. And she did. And she was right at that point where she was able to have surgery, and it was very effective. And so I eventually got to a point where I was extremely overwhelmed in that system because I was hypersensitive. I was, before I was walking into a client's room, I could hear everything that was happening in their body. And I didn't have any mentorship around that. I didn't know what was going on. But I started to get very sick working and showing up to those environments where, there's so many sick people. And unfortunately, the hospital systems often are not making them healthier or providing a very nourishing environment for wellness. And so I just couldn't be in that system anymore and stepped away. And actually, Soma Mystica came quite a bit later. During my time in the medical field, I was also practicing as a dakini. It's like working in the hospital system by day, dakini at night.
I love it.
down the road, actually, a lot of the time. Day job, night job. And yeah, like having really beautiful and profound experiences working mostly with men, supporting men to connect with their bodies and heal from trauma, and particularly sexual trauma, but beyond trauma, it was just like supporting to actually feel alive and come alive and develop a relationship with their eros and sexuality. And I've also studied in Nepal and India, and I won't go too much into all of the training I've done, but I'm death doula and medical astrologer, and I've worked a bunch in different Eastern and esoteric fields. And so Soma Mystica basically bridges these worlds together. And in my experience, they're actually not separate. And in the East, these fields are bridged. Like if we look at Ayurvedic medicine, which is the original traditional medicine, they don't see the physiology and the spiritual nature of the self as separate. It's all kind of grouped in. And even Hippocrates, used to talk about spiritual medicine, and that every diagnosis, every condition actually has a spiritual root. Steiner said this, a lot of your ancient medicine practitioners said this. And here we are taking the Hippocratic oath, and actually we have no understanding of, or we don't have any connection to how spirit is informing matter and the body. And so really what Soma Mystica does is it bridges these philosophies. And I teach a lot on the 5 bodies, the physical, emotional, mental, soul, spiritual bodies. And I teach clients how to work with these different aspects of the self, and to really listen to the field and the field intelligence, which, is a part of the physical body, but which also surrounds the body. So yeah, a lot of the work that I do is in attunement. It's in teaching practitioners how to become more sensitized to listen to what's actually happening in the field, and to guide clients to be able to actually just harness their own intuition and let their body speak. So I work a lot with something called like autogenic movement, and these processes that actually allow the body to reveal its natural intelligence. And in doing so, actually what's there is able to actually heal without story. And so, in my experience, that's been the most powerful and effective way to approach trauma, is actually through working with these autogenic movement processes and these processes that work with unconscious trauma.
Yeah, I love that. The practitioner work I'm doing is kind of a merging of psychotherapy with hands-on tantric body work, but essentially it's coming to the space of, can we be with someone and listen to what's there rather than having a predisposed set of conditions of where we think we need to guide them. And what I'm hearing you share is a very similar framework, but utilizing your background to do so. And I mean, I can imagine for, coming from the hospital background and working in that framework to then birthing something like this, people from that world probably are like, but this isn't, there's a logic, reason, and understanding here, Sigourney. I need more like, if A is B is C, the frame of that. So where,
It's
in the
interesting because I actually have. Oh, sorry.
no,
Okay,
no, no,
go.
go ahead, go ahead. No, Joe.
I actually have a lot of people from the medical system training with me. I have a woman that's in the field of psychiatry who's actually weaning clients with addiction off their psychiatry medications using the techniques that I've taught her, and she's having more profound effects. She's based just outside of New York. I actually sent a client to her like 2 weeks ago, and within one session, the client's frozen shoulder was completely unlocked. Like having really profound experiences. But yeah, she's working in the field of psychiatry, and so I've got a lot of my my practitioners or my clients actually bridging and taking this work back into the medical model, which was always my dream. I always wanted to do that. I was trying to create change inside of the system, and I just couldn't. I was constantly hitting walls. It was too frustrating for me. I was in arguments constantly. So I realized that my dharma was not inside the system. I had to create something outside of the system, and then train people that are actually doing the work in the system to take it back inside. But I just don't fit within that. I just don't fit within that system myself.
I
But
totally
yeah, so
understand.
we are actually, bridging those worlds. And I did a TEDx talk last year and spoke about, the emerging technology in which we can actually start to work with to start to detect, like symptoms before they become physical, like detecting symptoms in the energetic field. Trauma can exist in the energetic body without actually being in the physical somatic body, for example. And we can actually detect this using certain medical devices. And so part of my excitement is around like really merging these worlds, because I can talk to both. And a couple of really potent books to kind of explore if you're like excited about this topic is Energy Medicine by James Oshman, and The Subtle Body by Cindy Dale. They really bring in like a lot of evidence-based work for working with the biofield and working hands-off and actually working with field intelligence. And I feel like this is just the trajectory of where medicine is going, actually, is to start working with field intelligence and energy medicine.
And do you feel like, so I have a couple of clients I'm working with right now who are quite strong in working with the where AI integrates into the medical field. Where do you see that as a bridging gap, between energy and this? I know that's a whole Pandora's box, but it's
Yeah, it
alive,
is.
and I see some of the things with AI, like if people, they're able to get multiple diagnosis on different situations they have from AI models, and sometimes having better, input and results than they're getting from their doctor. So where does
Yeah.
AI integrate into this kind of bridging gap of energy medicine?
I mean, it's the future. It's where we're heading for sure. And I do think there's a lot of benefit to it. I saw someone's recent post about how they were able to decode what was happening in their body through AI, and no doctor could actually support them. So I think there is something really beautiful and beneficial about working with AI. And in saying that, I was having a conversation recently with my Ayurvedic doctor in India, and we're talking about this exact thing, how a lot of doctors are also just sitting there inputting symptoms into like a chat now and just pulling up possible diagnoses and using that. And it's not developing critical thinking. Like when I was in India and I was sitting there and like he was doing my initial diagnosis using, pulse reading and tongue diagnosis, but he would go into trance. So he'd sit there, his eyes would roll into the back of his head, he would go into trance, and he would basically like sense what was happening in my system. And that's also very similar to how I work as a medical intuitive. I can read what's happening in someone's body before I look at their charts and read what's happening in their medical astrology and do all of the rest of the, more formal diagnostics. And so I am more intuition led, and then I actually work with, I do testing as well just to validate what I'm sensing. But really we're devoid of that in Western medicine. We don't see that really. Like we don't see any kind of intuition based practices at all. And I feel like that's going to be more and more eliminated through the use of chat. I do feel like it's really important. Like there's something really beautiful about being able to actually work with like subtle energy medicine and being able to tune into your client and read what's happening with them on that level as well. So I think it's positive in many ways, and also I think it's really going to turn people into robots a little bit. But we already have that issue in the medicine world anyway, unfortunately.
This is accurate. Yeah, I feel quite similar in that. And I guess a part connected question to this, and this also connects the dots in some of the Dakini work is, often with Dakini work or just, hands-on tantric body work, there's a lot of hands on the body. And I often feel in the medical world that they, especially, mentioning a woman working in, with psychiatrics and things, it's like there's a strong place of do not place your hands on the body, and that's not the right place to be. And I see a culture and a community and a humanity moving farther and farther away from human touch because of things like AI, and how devoid people are from human touch and this longing that happens inside of that. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this, because this is something I see as almost a terrible epidemic that's just taking away our capacity to have human touch to touch, and with doctors or with mediums or and how do you address that with the work you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, like as Gabor Mate says, it's like it's not actually like children that are left, that are given all of their basic needs, that are not touched, will die. Like it's actually it's not. It is a core need. It's a core human need, and particularly when it comes to healing, actually. Without co-regulation, I actually feel a lot of the time we're just exacerbating people's symptoms. Without the capacity, because it just exacerbates this concept and this understanding that we're these separate beings, and there's this issue that we need to fix, and it like really dials in on this pathologizing point of view. And I feel like one of the beautiful things about touch and the work particularly that I've done as a Dakini, and the work with touch and this co-regulation process, is it really dissolves those kind of core wounding and barriers around feeling separate. And which is, I feel, one of the core splits that creates a lot of our issues actually. Touch is a really core part of what I teach. I have one particular body of work within Soma Mystica that's all about co-regulation and field entrainment for healing. It's called spinal attunement. And there's methodology to it, etc. We work on the spine and on the cranium and on the sacrum with different touch processes. But all of the, before even getting to a point where we work with touch, it's about entrainment. It's about field entrainment. So I'm teaching, my practitioners about Taoism and energy cultivation practices, and how to actually train your own state into a state of, balance and homeostasis, because that immediately, like when you walk into a room, like your energy state's going to impact your clients, and there's an entrainment process that happens there. There's a co-regulatory practice that happens. So if you're walking in after, stressed, and you've had a really shit morning or something, you're walking in to treat your client, then they're going to be entraining to you. They're going to be holding like mirroring you basically. So it's really, it's so important. And I think, you know, touch aside, like people in the medical industry should be learning about state. It is, you know, it can be explained scientifically. We can look at like brainwave states and, you know, like what that does to the nervous system, and that those kinds of impacts, that co-regulation or, you know, our state has on our client. Can either amplify their symptoms, or it can actually support in the complete dissolution of their symptoms. This is what like a tahini does. Actually, it is through this process of merging and co-regulation that the healing happens. So you know, even when I was working in the medical industry, that was still in a sense I was working as a tahini. Whilst I was not doing sexuality work, like I was working with state entrainment, and a lot of my clients would heal without me actually putting my hands on them, just through me being able to mirror them and state shift and support them to drop into safety. Because when someone feels safe, they heal organically. It's not something you have to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know, I'm curious, and this is kind of more around your own personal journey, but you know, having brought a child in the world, and obviously having a lot of creative fire in your body and your belly, and a lot of things coming through you, and you know, not in relationship with your child's you know, father anymore. How is your own personal relating world? You having time for good, you know, relating time, and how's that working out for you? I'd love to hear.
This is a fun one.
That's it. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so my pregnancy and postpartum period was actually quite traumatic. I
Mm,
split off with my daughter's father early on in my pregnancy,
mm-hmm,
and it wasn't a nice journey. I'll just put it that way. There was betrayal during pregnancy, and there was also a lot of lies.
mm,
And you know, as a woman who's pregnant and all of her senses are heightened, I was able to feel everything that was happening. And
mm,
when I was being told something else, it was creating a lot of cognitive dissonance inside of me. And so my pregnancy was really tense. I didn't feel like I had emotional availability for relating.
mm,
And the same goes, like, actually in my early postpartum period, probably the first, I think nearly the first year I was celibate, actually, and just in a process of, you know, diverting my attention to the journey of becoming a mother, and also to healing. Like, I was having a lot of mediation with her father, and we were, despite it being very traumatic and like very tense, we were committed to doing it together, and so that required a lot of repair.
mm-hmm,
So I just didn't have capacity in those kind of early years. But
mm-hmm,
I think once she was about a year and a half, I actually started traveling over to the UK and taking her around the world with me.
mm,
And I, yeah, started a lovership with a really close friend in the UK, and that was really beautiful because I already had a safe, you know, connected bond with him, and so we could just drop into intimacy, and I was able
mm,
to also like heal a lot of the tension that I had towards men from my experience during pregnancy through that relationship.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, since then I've been dating, and it's been nice, actually. I feel like things are only really just like starting to turn on more in my dating world in the past like 6 months.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
but I've had to work through some really big pieces to come back into trust, and, you know, to open my heart, and also to, you know, bring someone into my sphere and reality as a
of
mother.
course. Yeah.
And
And
also as a single mother, like, there's a lot of stigma around that, and there's a lot to kind of overcome, I feel, in terms of like worthiness of inviting love in, and just some personal pieces I've had to move through to come back into healthy relationship with
Yeah,
that.
of course, of course. And in your relating world, do you, envision Abe like bringing more children in the world? Do you feel like that's a complete piece, or is that like, because it's one thing to be dating as a single woman, without children, another thing to be dating, as a mother, and the different beings and people that come into your field, and where do you, obviously you never quite know, but where do you see the trajectory of your life moving ahead in those realms?
Yeah, well, I never knew if I was going to be a mother or not. To begin with, actually, like I wasn't, one of those young girls that plays with Barbies and dolls and really wants to be a mother and is maternal. I wasn't overly maternal. It wasn't until I was doing Heightened, actually, mystery school training, that I actually dropped into a deeper core need around, or desire around, becoming a mother. And 6 months later, I was pregnant. So it just happened really quickly. And I did see a Vedic astrologer when I was 24, and he said I would have a few children, some in my late 30s. I'm 35 now. So for me, it hasn't ever been like a matter of like, I really want children. It's been more of a process of an emerging process, and something that has come through with certain people and not with others. And so I feel like it's this like alchemical process that occurs when you meet the right person. Like sometimes this being appears and you've got to be like, okay, is this something we want to do? Or it's not, for me, it's not an inherent desire to bring lots of children into the world. And in saying that, my body's desire would be to have infinite amount of children and milkmaids and I have a really strong biological desire. If you're into human design, I have the 59-6 channel, which is the mating channel. And so my body could just have children. I've actually fallen pregnant 3 times. And I'm extremely fertile. Hence, I also have a lot of creative energy. So I feel like if I just left it up to my instincts, I'd have a whole bunch. But because I love having space and freedom and creativity, yeah, if I do have another child, I will need to be set up in a way which allows me to have still a lot of space for that. So yeah, I've considered it. I've been considering it.
Yeah.
And I would set myself up differently to how I did it the first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I was totally just thrown into the deep end the first time. So I didn't really have much time to set myself up. But I have hindsight now, and I would build myself to a point where I could have a full-time nanny and still have a lot of liberty whilst being a mother.
Might be Bali on your forefront then.
My
Bali's a
daughter's father
good.
doesn't move to Bali, so
He doesn't want to move to Bali. Okay, gotcha.
no, he does.
Oh, he does.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean Bali's. We're generally out there from about January through May, where babies coming in September, and that's one thing I've seen with a lot of young parents in Bali is, I mean, the Balinese are just amazing with young children, and just
They're
some of
incredible.
their cultures and the way that they are with children is amazing. So I'm very blessed that we get to be in the vibration of Bali with with our first child, and we're wanting to have another one as well. So yeah, and I love that you mentioned the Vedic astrology, because for me, intuitively I always felt I'd bring children in the world around 42, 43, and then there was sometime in my like mid 30s, I had a reading with a Vedic astrologer, and who basically like put that in astrology perspective, because I'm, just ending the end of like a K2 period, and then sometime right around now, sometime right around now, I'm going into like 20-year Venus time frame. So
Yeah.
what's your experience of the K2 period? Because that's what I've been in. I mean, which has been a lot of creation and outward movement and reaching into the world, which has been a lot of my work the last 5 to 7 years, especially. And I can also feel that like pulsing inside that's moving me towards grounding and landing, and still continue to do my work, but in a different way without as much travel. But clearly there's a reaction in there. Tell what's your experience of the K2 period?
It's been really intense.
Mm.
Yeah, really,
Mm-hmm.
really intense. Just constant friction in my being. I feel like this constant pressure to drive things forwards. Like, not much time for relaxation, that's for sure.
Mm.
I'm looking forwards to my Venus period, which starts at 43. He's like, life's going to get really good for you after 43,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel. So I just have to get through this period. But I feel
Yeah,
you. I'm
yeah,
deep in it.
you'll thrive, I'm sure.
It's like, it feels like being in a pressure cooker where the diamond's being formed, but it's really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Mm-hmm.
karmic relationships as well.
Mm.
Did you find
Mm.
that?
Yeah, there were definitely I mean, for me, I can't remember exactly when I started this period, but relationships for me have been my deepest, evolutionary tool, and as I was just sharing with you in my current dynamic, it's such a different relationship compared to what I've had. The last, several partners I've been with have just been these very large, like verbose, intense, like someone as Raven, who's a triple Scorpio, who I love so deeply. I just had her on the show recently. And but there's just like, I notice in my nervous system now with Natasha, who's an amazing woman, it's going to be an incredible mother, super intuitive, connected to Kundalini and energetics, and but just like there's so much more like ease. Like I feel such a level of like ease in my own body system. It's very, very nurturing. And and especially now as her as a mother, she's like, she just want cuddles, and her sex drive is through the roof as a mother. I don't that's like wildly intense, which is amazing. I love that. And there's just a deeper simplicity that my whole body is just like celebrating. She says to me all the time, she's like, I don't need to know about all the relationships you've been, but I'm so grateful to every single one of those women because it's made you so amazing. So yeah, deep karmic relationships for sure. And it's, it's set me up to be very at ease going into this next big phase of life for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'd love to, if there's, we mentioned a few things that you're doing in the world, but if there's any, other new projects or anything else that you'd like to speak into before we close here, love to hear anything else of where people can find you and how they can dive into. And I feel quite drawn to wanting to go study into Soma Mystica as well. I feel like it'd be a good support
So,
for the,
oh, the just in the baby portal, October.
Mm,
So it's going to be in late November.
mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah, so I'm mostly hosting trainings over at Soma Mystica. So you can
mhm,
find us on Instagram. It's Soma Mystica, one word. All of our trainings are in our link tree and on that feed. We do have a website, but it's been updated at somamystica.org. And then my personal work is sigouneybelle.com. My website is not very exciting, but my books are there. I've got 2 books up there at the moment. Wild Business, which is a book I wrote pre-baby, and The Mother Wild Revolution, Cultural Change Through Generational Activism, which
mm.
is being published this month, actually. First copies go out this month. And it's
Amazing.
going to be in bookstores as of next month, which is exciting.
Mhm,
That's there. The Dakini memoirs will probably be, I'd say, like later this year.
mhm.
That's another book that I'm releasing.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you for the work you're doing in the world. Thank you for your beautiful transparency and just your ease and grace as a woman, as a practitioner, as a business owner, I have much respect and appreciation for the path that you take, and I'm grateful to have you as a friend in my life.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks for the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, it
It's
was
a lot
super fun. So thank you everyone for tuning in here at Love, Sex, and Leadership. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like or subscribe and follow Sigourney. Go check out all the work that she's doing, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you everyone. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.